do that a lot. Okay, to prepare the transaxle for removal, we first took off the starter, which is dangling here. We also unhooked the CV joints and put a baggie around each CV joint on each side that keeps them from falling apart, and it also holds the grease in so no dirt can get in the grease. We removed the bolts on the back of the transaxle, the bolts in the front of the transaxle, took the shift coupler loose, took the grounding strap loose, and unhooked the slave cylinder. So it should all be ready to take out. We've also drained the oil out of it. Go over the parts of the transaxle. We have the bell housing back here. We have the main housing, the intermediate housing, nose cone, hockey stick. Okay, we're going to start by taking the bell housing loose. That is this piece here. And we can do that number 13 socket, a bunch of nuts inside, and a couple of nuts outside. Now that we've got all the nuts out, we will use the rubber-tipped hammer here to just gently tap the casing apart. When we do that, a bunch of oil is probably going to come out the bottom. Now that we have the bell housing off, we can see inside of the area where the differential and such is. So what we have here, the differential, of course, we have the input shaft. And our next step is probably going to be to get the differential out. To do that, we're going to have to take these two side covers loose. Now the side covers have a couple of screws. Well, first on the side covers, we'll start by taking out these things here. To do that, we're going to have to pop out this seal in the middle. I'm told the way to do that is to take a screwdriver and punch it through the middle of it and then pop it out. Then there'll be a little snap ring inside of it. So we took and we punched through there, and you kind of squeeze around and feel for it, and it pops right out. Inside here we can see a little snap ring. I'm going to have to get that snap ring off. It's important to keep the parts separate so we know which side is which. So I've marked all of the driver side parts, I'll put a D on. Passenger side parts, I'll put a P on, and I'm using this little engraving tool here. I've already done it. That'll help us keep this stuff separate so we don't get it all mixed up. Okay, we got the little snap ring out. Took use of this snap ring plier here, plus a couple screwdrivers to work it all out of there. It's kind of one of those things that helps to have two guys doing. Next thing to do will be to pull this little thing off of here. Looks like it'll take a little bit of persuasion, maybe a little bit of light prying. Probably going to need to get the either the big screwdriver or the hammer after it. Managed to find a gear puller that looks like it'll just about fit. So put it on there and then we'll tighten the gear puller down with a wrench. Hopefully pop that thing right out of there. Ready. Okay, so the gear puller pulled that out quite easily. So now we're turning it around and we're going to repeat everything on the other side. What we're going to have to do, these control the amount of backlash and such in the differential. So when we take them apart, we're going to have to mark where this inside piece is lined up. Don't really have to worry about this, although we should kind of pay attention to how much gap is on the bolt holes on it. once we get it off, we'll look and we'll mark the thing that's inside of it. Okay, we pulled the adjuster cover off so we can see what we've got in here. We've got this, this part here, and this turns. And what we'll be able to do is crank this out. Eventually we'll be able to pull the differential out. You can also see a seal in there. But it's critically important that we mark where this is so that when we reassemble it, we can get it to the same position and thus hold our backlash and stuff on the differential the same. So we're going to use a little tool to mark a little line. So just as a backup mechanism here, we already marked this, but we want to make darn certain we can reproduce it. So we took and ran a straight edge and then a set of feeler gauges. And we found that the passenger is in about 0.14 14 thousandths from the edge. Now we're going to repeat everything on the driver's side. So we don't have the right tool to take this off, but whenever you don't have the right tool, the appropriate thing to do is to start beating on it with a hammer. So we can take a little chisel. Okay, hold it down a little lower. So turning it with the chisel got real old real fast, so we turned one of the side covers into this little tool by basically just taking a metal rod and running a couple bolts through it. We didn't have to damage the adjuster cover in any way, and we have a nice tool that lets us get plenty of leverage on that. And we can just crank it right out, which is good because it's going to take a lot of cranks to get her done. So our makeshift tool took that apart with ease. We can now see the inside of the differential. And there's a little spacer ring. Probably don't want to lose that. And then there's a little bearing. We're going to have to flip it all the way around and take the other side loose. So the driver's side, we're also going to check with the feeler gauge just for good measure. And it is quite a bit more. It's about 0.40, maybe, about 0.40. Okay, so we've got the passenger side out. The differential's ready to come loose, but there are a couple little spacers in here that we should make a point not to lose or forget about. We'll take them and we'll throw them in a baggie. I think we'll even mark which one goes on which side just in case it matters later. So this one here was the passenger side. This one here, driver's side. So let's flip this around. You can see our differential is now good and loose in there. Maybe the next thing to do is probably to get this input shaft out of the way. To get the input shaft out of the way, there's a little snap ring right down inside of here that we're going to have to pull loose. Okay, I pulled the little snap ring using the snap ring pliers. I took and I pulled it back. Now what there is in here is there's a little shaft, a little coupler attached to the reverse gear. It's right back here, and that couples this input shaft to the other shaft that's in there. So what we've got to do is we've got to grab that coupler, slide it back. So I've managed to slide it back. Then what we can do is we can take this shaft and we can twist it, and what we will find is that it's threaded in there, and there's a little threaded stud that holds these two shafts together, and then the coupler slides over the top of them. So to get it apart, you had to take the snap ring, pull it forward, slide the coupler itself forward, and then twist it loose to twist that stud out of the inside. Now we should be ready to pull our differential out. There we go. Just barely clears. Now we have a good unobstructed view of the next tasks that we're going to have to do. So our next step, before we pull the big pinion nut loose, is we're going to want to get the nose cone and the intermediate housing loose. So what that's going to do is mean taking these two nuts off, taking all these nuts off to separate the nose cone, and then taking all these off so the intermediate housing will come apart.
Laser.
Okay, we've got all of the nuts off of the nose cone. We're ready to just pull the nose cone off. So we've already had it off, so it comes off quite easy. It's actually a aftermarket new nose cone here. Hockey stick pulls in a little bit as you're doing it, and then you can pull it over and get it out. Nice oil running out. Then inside of here we'll see some parts that are ready to fall out and get lost, so we'll just remove them now. That's this little shaft and this little selector lever. And now that we have the nose cone off, we'll clean up our mess a bit and then pull these nuts loose for the intermediate housing. Okay, so we removed all of the nuts from the intermediate housing. Can't actually pull it apart because it's still being held by this gigantic pinion bearing retaining nut. So what we have here is a special socket with a cutout for the reverse gear that is going to exactly match that nut. So we can put it in there, and then we'll take our big breaker bar or our impact wrench or whatever tool happens to suit us and get that thing apart. Give you a little bit better view on it, a little bit of an angle. So in here we can see the nut. Here is the special socket. Socket fits. Then we'll take the breaker bar, impact wrench, get that thing loose. Let's go do that. Ours was hand tight, which makes for great disassembly, but you kind of wonder why it was in there hand tight. So we just work it a little bit each time, and eventually we'll get it out. Okay, we've got it loose most of the way. Now to be able to get it by hand the rest of the way out of here. And there is the pinion nut removed. That can get thrown in the bin with the solvent. Okay. So it's time to press that pinion shaft out. There's a couple different ways. We could use the hammer and the dowel there to beat on it. But our toolkit came with this leverage tool, so what we've done is we put the bell housing back on, then we're going to take this and shove it inside, pry it up against the bell housing, and just lever it, and just kind of push on it, and that'll push that pinion loose. Let's see if it actually works. Can you see it from the other side there? look like I'm pushing on it squarely.
Who does? I don't know. Maybe I can help.
Yeah. This one's got a little thing that holds the front in place. Here, take it. I need you to hold on to the case. It's loose. Yeah. Let me try whapping it a little. I don't know if I like this tool. Kind of see using it if you didn't have a choice. Maybe a press is a better way to go. Here, that was bent or broke something. Oh, it doesn't look like anything moved in. Okay, so what we did is we had one guy whapping on this a little bit, another guy whapping on that, and eventually it'll come loose. Once that's loose, we can just take this. You want to grab this case and pull it off of there. There it is. There is the inside of our transaxle. The case can get set down with the other case now. So we can see what we got here. So that concludes the first half of the video, which is on disassembling the transaxle. The next part we may talk about how to take the gears out.